All right. My name's Keanu Rish. This is the Lundquist Real Estate Podcast. We have Alex Downard here. We're just going to have a conversation and talk about things in the county and imagine 185 and kind of the steps of growing Wabash and developing our rural communities and so forth. So to start out, you were born and raised in Indianapolis, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and you graduated from Cardinal Ritter High School.
Yep.
Where's that at? Because it doesn't ring a bell for me.
Nope, you're good. So I grew up in the Indy area, I would say.
Okay.
Nowadays, it seems like you talk to anybody in a 45-minute radius of Indianapolis as they're from Indy.
Yeah.
I grew up in Avon, which is just to the west side. And then when I was in high school, my mom and I moved to the true west side of Indianapolis, just west of Speedway. So downtown in Speedway area, west side of downtown, and then Ritter High School is on the west side of Indy.
Okay. So my wife's from Zionsville, so she's not
Okay.
very far away from you at all.
Yeah.
Or where you grew up at. And then you graduated from Manchester College in 2020.
Yeah, Manchester University is really what brought me up here. I decided that I was thinking about going to IU, Purdue, Ball State, a big state school, and decided that I wanted to continue playing football. And so after that, was kind of between Hanover College, which is 2 hours south of Indianapolis, down along the Ohio River, and then Manchester University, and landed on Manchester. And so moved up in 2016 to go to school and play football at Manchester.
So I saw when I was doing a little bit of research that were you the captain of the football team?
Yes,
okay.
yeah, high school and college.
High school.
Yep.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed that. Not saying that you don't give me the football, but like you're very business oriented, very articulate. A lot of times I wouldn't have guessed it.
No
It's cool.
pressure, articulate. That we've got another hour here to go.
Yeah,
Hopefully
we'll try
we'll
not
live
to
up
use any
articulate.
Who was it? Tiffany Hopper chastised. She's like, "Hey, stop using big words and explain yourself, because not everybody knows." I was like, "My bad."
Yeah, no.
All right. So you graduated from Ritter High School, graduated from Manchester College, and you went on to start Downard Development Strategies.
Yeah, so
Kind of break it down. What is it? How'd you get into it? What made you want to start it?
Yep. So I did my undergrad at Manchester from 2016 to 2020, and actually this Saturday finished my master's in business at Manchester. So I'll be a double Manchester grad.
So you just graduated with your master's?
Yep. Saturday
Congrats.
is the commencement ceremony. So thanks. Yeah. So double Manchester grad, but in my undergrad studied business and political science. And my first job out of school, I worked for a commercial construction company out of Fort Wayne, Michael Kinder and Sons, MKS, who's done a lot of work across Wabash County and across the region. And so was doing sales and business development for them for about 2 years, and then decided to start my own kind of one-person LLC consulting business and continued doing business development for MKS. So brought them on kind of as my first client under that entity, but then was expanding what I was doing in college. I'd done an internship down in the State House, and so brought on 3 workforce education clients, partnered with another firm in Indianapolis, and so was doing work in the State House, was doing business development still for MKS, kind of multi-client public affairs business development entity. And then in the fall of 2022, stopped doing all the work in the State House and had the opportunity to lead the Imagine 185 work in Wabash County. And so contracted with the Community Foundation, Grow Wabash County, and all the cities and towns to lead that work.
Okay, so how'd you get linked up? Was it LinkedIn? Was it a friend of a friend? How'd you find that position and get connected?
So rewind back to my senior year of college at Manchester University. I graduated, as I'd mentioned, in 2020, and so in the middle of the pandemic. The pandemic really, February, March of 2020, I graduated later that May. And so my last internship in the spring semester of my senior year was for Grow Wabash County. So for your listeners who aren't familiar, they're the Countywide Economic Development Group and Chamber of Commerce. So Grow Wabash County today is our focuses on entrepreneurship, small business support, as well as business attraction expansion for the county, right? And so we may talk a little bit more about their work later on.
That's Tennille, right?
Tennille Zartman, yep, is the president and CEO there. Her predecessor, Keith Gillenwater, was the CEO there, and Tennille was there also, but that was the last internship that I had the senior semester of my senior year, spring semester of my senior year.
Gotcha.
And so part of that internship, one of the things that I was tasked with was helping to write an RFP and go through an RFP process, request for proposal, to hire a consultant to write a countywide comprehensive plan. And so in that process, I thought it was busy intern work because I remember growing up, my dad's ran the Chamber of Commerce in the town of Avon my whole life.
Okay.
And so I always remember just hearing stories about strategic plans, right? Organizations doing strategic plans, communities doing strategic plans. And most of the time, they just sit on a shelf, right? It's just an exercise of, hey, let's ask the community what they want to see, or let's ask our stakeholders, but then nothing happens after the fact.
Yeah.
And so that's what I thought this was as an intern assignment was, okay, we're going to hire and do the strategic plan, but then what's going to happen? So I did that in my internship, but fast forward in the summer of 2022, I was catching up with Keith Gillenwater and then Patty Grant, who today is my predecessor, who at the time was leading the Community Foundation. And so was talking with Keith and Patty, and they had said they'd finished the strategic planning process, which was then branded Imagine 185, and Wabash is county number 85, so it was imagining one Wabash County into the future. And they were talking about the planning process, and I, as a resident of the county, had attended a couple of the strategic planning sessions, but they'd adopted this comprehensive plan. So all the cities and towns, the county,
The one that
all
you
government
made?
entities. I kind of stepped away after my internship, and they went through this planning process. And so I had just participated as a resident in the engagement. So running from 2020 to 2022 was really this strategic planning process that they went through. And I remember Keith and Patty saying, hey, we just adopted this strategic plan. And I said, well, what are you going to do now, right? Like, is it going to sit on a shelf? And they said, no, we're actually trying to hire a director for the strategic plan. Would you help us write a job description? So I said, yeah, absolutely. So I got about halfway through writing that job description. And then, as I'd mentioned at the time, I was doing stuff in the State House and all over for MKS and had a couple different clients. And I came back to Keith and Patty and said, man, I got about halfway through this job description, and I'd love to do this work, right? I'd love to stop doing other things and really focus back here in my backyard in Wabash County.
Yeah.
And so at that point, kind of put together a proposal through my business and submitted it to Keith, Patty, and then all the cities and towns. So Mayor Long, who I know has been on this podcast, our county commissioners, and then representatives from the other 4 towns in Wabash County. And they looked at it and decided to bring me on board to lead that implementation. So that started, the plan was done and adopted, the Imagine 185 plan. But then it was my goal, right, and the next several years of my career was spent on kickstarting that implementation of all the initiatives that were included in that comprehensive plan.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to get more into the Imagine 185 here in a little bit, but you're also on the Habitat for Humanity and the Manchester Alive.
Yep. So Habitat for Humanity, Manchester Alive actually was a board that I got on right fresh out of college. And so as I think about one of the things I appreciate about Wabash County and about Northeast Indiana is that if you're a young professional and want to get involved in something, you have the opportunity to, right? Whereas in big metropolitan cities, and Fort Wayne's grown pretty big, but you can still get plugged in if you want to, right? Or you want to meet somebody. A lot of leaders are willing to do that. And so Manchester Alive was the very first board I joined as a volunteer right out of college. And then I recently just turned off that board, but had a great experience the first 5 years of my career volunteering and serving there. And then right now, yes, Habitat for Humanity is another board that I serve on in the county.
So you're everywhere. You've been kind of down to Indianapolis, up to Fort Wayne, North Manchester, Wabash. So yeah, very well-rounded.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm very fortunate. I feel that even when I was in college, one thing I appreciate about Wabash County was I was able as a student at Manchester to get plugged into a lot of the leaders in the community, and just feel very fortunate that as a student and then early in my career had a lot of folks that have continued to pour into me and expose me. I always say that when I got out of school, I would go into a meeting with somebody in Northeast Indiana or across the state, and my goal was to ask 2 things from those meetings. The first was, what advice would you have for a young professional if you were in my shoes? And the second was, who are 3 people that, knowing what you know of what I'm trying to do, that I should get to know, right? And so every meeting I left with 3 more people to go talk to.
Yeah, it's good.
So that really
Good
helped me
questions.
expand and build my network right out of school.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great questions, and I absolutely agree. That's definitely very wise questions to ask and to get connected and grow your network. So now that we know who you are a little bit, let's move on. We're going to talk about the market real quick, the real estate market.
Yeah.
So I just made this Facebook post. However, I'm going to touch base on it on the podcast.
Yeah.
So everybody was kind of expecting this, buyer's market, right? After, they're waiting for the crash, they're waiting to buy, and time again, we see that the best time to buy was 30 years ago, and the next best time is today. And the odds of you hitting the 2008 housing crash, perfect, but in 2026 is probably not very likely. And so, I've lived by it. I'm 28 and I'm on my second house, and I don't know of anybody who's lost money on a house. So I always encourage people, buy a house now, because you have really two options. If you buy a house now, and the interest rates right now today, I checked them, they're 6.73. If they go down in 2 years, great, you can refinance. But if they go up, great, you have the lower interest rate. And, right now there's only 38 active listings in all of Wabash. And this is the spring.
Yeah.
There should be,
time, right?
yeah, this is busy. This is like probably the hottest part of the whole year. And we have 38 listings. Yeah. And there is more negotiating going back and forth, but you can't really argue when you have one of 38 listings. I listed a house and it needed quite a bit of work, but it was in a good location and it had a beautiful property and a sweet creek. And we had, I think, 40 plus showings on it, a ton of showings. Yeah. And everybody said, hey, it's overpriced, it's overpriced, it's overpriced. However, we got, I feel like, a good offer out of it with everything waived. And that's what happens when there's just not enough houses on the market, is those homes hold their value. Yeah. Supply and demand. When supply goes down, demand goes up. And so you can't really have a true buyer's market if the supply is not there. Yeah. Which reminds me, so it's actually an Amish family who's buying this house. Okay. So when we get to the population decline or growth, whatever we want to talk about, I was curious, and Bob wanted me to ask if, when you guys take that information, do your survey or your studies, if you guys are accounting for the Amish families growing in, because I think Bob said they have like 60 kids out there.
And Bob's worked with your firm, and Bob have worked with a lot of those Amish families. And I just want to say too, the Facebook posts that you do and updating the market statistics, but really Bob and Christy, John, your entire team, and really, frankly, realtors in Wabash County. Oh yeah, super grateful for, right? As we get into the Imagine 185 plan, a fourth of that. So there's 4 main sections that they organize the action agenda and the initiatives, projects that are in there. Of the 4, housing is one of those 4 pillars, right? We know, as we talk about population, how critical housing and attainable housing inventory is, and housing across the housing market, right? At all price points for all buyers, and us needing more inventory. So as our efforts and a lot of the projects across the county, I'm so grateful for all that I've learned from you guys, continue to learn about the real estate market as a non-real estate guy. Just an invaluable resource, whether it's you guys having a listing, working with us on a project or not. You're always, Bob especially, has just always been open to sharing his decades of knowledge about the real estate market. And as we try and build solutions to address the housing crisis and to improve existing housing inventory and providing more inventory, like I said, across the spectrum, your guys' insight has been invaluable in that learning process.
Yeah, Bob's awesome. He's a wealth of knowledge. Same thing with Christy. And every time I actually use that as a selling. Some people ask me, they're like, Keanu, why don't you go out and start your own brokerage? I said, because honestly, I haven't been doing it long enough. Yeah. Bob, Christy, John, and Dave, they provide a service to me, and they're knowledgeable. They're always willing to lend a helping hand. Every contract I write, I get reviewed by them. You cannot lie, like 45 years of experience. And that's just Bob. That's not including John or Christy or Dave. When it comes to pricing a house and working through a contract and negotiating, like, they bring a lot of value into it. And the reason why I haven't and won't for a long, if ever, go out on my own is because they provide a critical service to me, and they do a great job for Wabash County. And they just love it. And they invest in Wabash County. Like, it's 100%. Like, this is their home. 100%. And I see John, because now he's the managing broker, he's the boss, cut checks all the time because he loves Wabash County, and we're a team, and like, you want to grow together and you want to have a win-win relationship. And that's how I try and explain every single real estate contract. Like, you want the buyers to be happy and you want the sellers to be happy. And if one of them's not, it's really not a good transaction. It's not the way it should be. And
what I appreciate about your entire firm is my experience working with really realtors across the county, but you guys for sure, is it's never about the dollar, right? It's, at the end of the day, it's about you can tell that all of you love it, right? Bob and Christy love it. It's their career. It's what they've built. They absolutely love the real estate, but they love helping customers, right? And that's why they've built the brand. You guys have built the brand that you have in the county, is because it's not just about every dollar, right? It's about helping the client.
Yeah. I actually just had so I'm sure you know, I work for the sheriff's department, right?
Yep.
So I'm a full-time sheriff deputy, and I sell real estate part-time. And I like being a cop. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's fun. There's a lot of enjoyable things. The camaraderie is probably my favorite part. Yeah. Just big group of guys who all get along and have fun and do their job. However, real estate is a little different, right? Like, nobody wants to go to jail.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear they have a warrant.
Yeah.
But everybody people who are in the house buying process, they're excited and they're happy and they're like, man, this is the next big step for my family and my kids. And you know, Carson and Nevaeh are getting their own rooms now. They don't have to share. And like, it's just a very exciting time for families, and it's very enjoyable and fulfilling.
Yeah, you get to work with folks it's maybe some of the lower points in their life, and then turn around and get to work with folks at the higher points in life.
It's the two extremes of society.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I'm glad I've had the opportunity and continue to have the opportunity to be a sheriff deputy. It has shown me a part of life and society and living conditions that I would have never have seen. Yeah. There's something so humbling about, after you're on a bad call or something, to go home and hold your wife and hold your kid and just like this is it. This is all we get.
Your perspective.
And if you're lucky, you get 50 years with them. Yeah. And it's like, hold them tight.
Yeah.
And
no, that's great perspective, and I'm sure you hear this all the time. But I talk to our team at the Community Foundation a lot, or in this line of work, right? We often think that what we're doing is really, really important, right? And at the end of the day, it's not life or death situations, right? And we can only do what we get to do because of people like you. And so I'm sure you hear all the time, thank you, and how much we appreciate it from the community standpoint.
Oh yeah.
But that is true. What you're doing truly is every day protecting our community, right? And at times, I'm sure, is life or death, and it's really important and goes unrecognized a lot of times, I'm sure. But it's critical to our community, and anything that we're going to talk about, or what I have the opportunity to get to work on. The challenging days, the exciting things don't pale in comparison, and wouldn't be possible without the work you guys do.
Yeah, and you know, while we're on it, like, I'm just a patrol officer. I'm like bottom tier. I'm just doing the grunt duties, which I enjoy. VIN checks, 911 hangups, car accidents. But there's a whole element of, you know, drug task force and the emergency response team. That's the ERT team, and then you have the detectives and you have the canine officers, and those are the guys who I'd say a good portion, over more than 50% of them, don't have another part-time job. Like, that is who they are. That's what they live and breathe. Yeah. And those are the assets of Wabash County. And while we're here, I just want to take a second and say thank you guys for your service. Right. I know sometimes it can come off as cringy, but sincerely, you guys are the ones who are pouring in to Wabash County on one income. You're not working a part-time job, and so thank you for just going above and beyond and providing a value, and I see it. And same thing with our volunteer fire department. Like, those guys don't get paid. They show up religiously on every car accident.
Because they care.
Yeah, because they care, and they dedicate a ton of time. And so thank you to, you know, Noble and Chester and Pleasant and Paw Paw, and I think there's a few more. But
yeah, and we talk about all the quality of life, quality of place, housing, things that bring people or help drive a decision in our schools, right? Drive a decision of where a family's going to locate. None of those things matter if we don't have a safe community, right? Yeah. And so just to echo what you're saying, thank you to everybody that makes that possible. Yeah,
we and it helps. Some people are like, man, the community's awful. I'm like, in Wabash County, we have a pretty awesome community. Like, honest, so I went and I was serving civil paperwork. One of the jobs of the sheriff's department is we go to deliver the paperwork of the courthouse. And I passed by this house. I missed my turn, and I see they must have been they were celebrating Mother's Day, and I see 2 or 3 guys. They start waving their hands. I'm like, well, that's where I need to be. I wonder if they know me or somebody else who drives a patrol pickup truck. So I get there and like, hey man, do you want a hamburger? And I'm like, my wife has lasagna ready at the house, or I would, but they were so welcoming, so nice, and that's I would say that's 75 to 85% of all of Wabash County is just this really, we may be Yankees, but like we're nice Yankees, and it's I love Wabash County. We have a good county.
Absolutely.
Because of people like you and our law enforcement and our social workers, and I think we have a lot of good.
Yeah, and
here in Wabash.
I would say that, I've had conversations with folks across the board about projects in our community and people for things, people against things, and what I always talk about with the Imagine 185 work is that what Imagine 185 did, regardless of anything that's on that in that plan, right, or any project that's came out of that plan, or any person that's touched that plan, the best thing that it did for our community was just shine light on the importance of like investing in our future, right, and making this county a better place. And it's just created that spirit of not all the times collaboration in terms of everybody being on the same page, but at least a common understanding of all of us, and it takes all of us working together to create a brighter future, and that it's not going to just happen naturally, right? I think that's another big thing we talk a lot about is if we want our community to look a certain way, even if we want our community to be exactly what it's like 10 years from now, if it's somebody that's like, I want Wabash County to be exactly everything it is today, that takes effort, right? And that takes work from a variety of people. It's not one person, it's not one organization, it's not one project that's making that happen, but it's the collective of all of those things.
Yeah, and that's the thing I didn't realize was, I believe it's the state of the communities. All of the communities come in, like Rowan and LaGros and North Manchester and Wabash, and everybody gets up and they take a second and they talk about what they're working on in their community. And it's like these are our community leaders, and they are pushing the ball forward. And you're just one guy, Scott's just one guy, Bob's just one guy, and Christine's just one girl. And so it's everybody pushing together. And I did not realize how many hundreds of projects were actively going on inside Wabash County. Yeah. And then you have, like, Scott talked about it a little bit here on the podcast. People, why was JJ's not progressing? And it's like, well, we have to get all the plans finalized. They want a RV dumping station. And so it's like, well, now we got to get the water finalized and blueprints. And we saw it at the sheriff's department. Like, by the time something gets decided, hey, we are going to do this, to having the plans, to getting it built, man, it's like, it feels like it's over a year for each one of those steps typically.
Yeah. I break down projects in our work, Mayor Long, all of our community leaders. And that's one thing, just for a second, that I would say about it's not just our government leaders, right? It's not just our nonprofit civic organization leaders. It's the private sector too, right? I mean, it takes the inside of Bob Lundquist helping on a housing project, right? No different than it takes leaders of Ford Meter Box or other companies. We're just so blessed in the county across the board, right? Government, nonprofit, for-profit, that within 24 hours, what one of our competitive advantages are in 24 hours, if we needed leaders in a room and it was something large enough and important enough to Wabash County, people would show up.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And we're very fortunate for that, and that's not the case in a lot of places. And that does not mean it's always sunshine and roses, or that we always agree, or that we don't have massive disagreements about big projects, right? Because that is 100% the case and should be the case, right? That's what makes living in the United States and Indiana special, right? But all of those projects, to your point about JJ's, our work, to boil it down, is you have a concept of a project or program or a problem you're trying to solve. You create a solution. You move that along through due diligence to where all it's missing is money. You identify the money. You get the money. You implement the project, right? And that sounds like a really 4 or 5 step simple process. But within each of those, as that project progresses along the line to completion, people hear about it somewhere along here. People see it when it's complete and it's done.
Yeah.
What they will never see is everything that goes into all of the conversations, all of the little details in between or behind closed door things that have to happen. I don't mean that non-transparently, but just like the things that aren't public as it relates to getting state design release approval, right? It's all of those micro steps before our project can come to fruition that Mayor Long, he does what he does, not for the credit, right? No different than our team, right? At the end of the day, 20 years from now, our kids or grandkids are going to get to enjoy a program that the Community Foundation started or touched or worked on, and have no idea who we are as individuals, have no idea the organization maybe even worked on it. But that's what's special about Wabash County and a lot of our leaders is most of our leaders, ego's not there, right? They don't care about the credit. And I've never seen a community that has groups of leaders, as many leaders as we do, that's the case, right?
Yeah.
It's not about the credit. It's about what's best 20 years from now, even if we aren't going to see the benefit of it. We talk a lot about stewardship as a value of our organization and how we're just in the shoes today. Right at the end of the day, every decision, maximizing and stewarding every decision with all the information that we have, right? Mayor Long has more information when he goes to make a decision than the general public does, right? Our team too, and it's man, with all of the information we have, making the best decision, stewarding every moment, maximizing every moment, because we're making decisions for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when somebody else will be in our shoes.
Yeah. It's the concept of planting the oak tree, knowing that you'll never enjoy the shade.
That's exactly right. We talk about that all the time.
I mean, it's that, and it's trying to pass down a better community, leaving Wabash better than we found it.
That's 100% right.
And yeah, we have a lot to be thankful for.
And that's one thing I would say, even leaders that across the county or community members that I may not see eye to eye with, for the most part, if I can know that their heart's in the right place about it, it's okay that we may not be on the same side about something, because I trust their heart, right? I trust that they are approaching it from the same lens, even if it's a different outcome than I see it.
Yeah.
We're both, if we can have the mutual respect that we're approaching a problem with a solution potentially, and it may be two totally different solutions, but if I can trust that their heart and they're waking up every day trying to, again, plant seeds for the tree that they're never going to sit under, right? Leaving it better than we found it.
Yeah.
Then we'll manage the rest. We'll be all right with the rest.
All right, moving on. So I have a couple population figures. Man, it seems like we're real close to cutting even. And even when I was doing the research, some places said that we've grown the last couple of years, and other places said that we've shrunk, 10 to 50.
Yeah.
And imagine 185, you're, focusing on population growth, or obviously not decline.
Yeah. Trying to minimize the decline.
Trying to minimize the decline. So what's kind of your guys' perspective? How are you addressing this point? Because, for decades we've declined in population. Bob was telling me today, he said, when new people are, looking at Wabash County to come in, do they want to send their kids to a school that graduates 50 kids a year? He said when he graduated 200 kids from Northfield.
Yeah.
200.
Yeah.
And now it's around 50.
Yeah.
And so I guess what's your guys' strategic plan, and what's your guys' objective? And
I'll nerd out on the population.
Okay.
Just the population numbers, how we look at that for a second, and then we can move into the countywide approach, not just me or us, obviously, but projects to address some of that, right? So when you look at population numbers, we just use the Stats Indiana numbers, which gives annual numbers in between the 10-year census period, right?
Okay.
So all of these things, if we really want to know population-wise, we're pushing to the 2030 census, right? That's every year the population numbers come out, whether they look good or they look bad for us, it's always pedal down because we've got 5 years left or 4 years left until the 2030 census, right? But as you look at population, you measure two things, right? You look at your birth and your death rate, and you look at what they call your net migration rate.
Yep.
So birth death rate is the amount of people die versus the amount of people born, and what that delta would be, right? And then you look at the net migration rate, which is all the people that move in and move out in a year, and what that number looks like, right? So 2021, 22, 23, 24, and in the recent numbers from 2025, Wabash County's shown great net migration numbers. In a couple of the years, it was nearly 200 that we were positive, right?
Oh, that's
of all
good.
the people that moved in and move out, right? And so our net migration numbers have been really, really good. And you see a little bit of a dip in 22 and 23. I think with rates, when rates went up, right, less people are going to move and buy a house. So some of that's probably a factor. So you have your net migration rate. And again, we, in terms of rate, so proportional to our population of the 11 county region in Northeast Indiana, we were first or second compared to the 11 county region with our net migration rate of people that moved in and moved out. And so that was really positive, because that's helped us is our death rate still is about twice our birth rate on an annual basis. And so we have an aging population. We have a lot of quality retirement facilities in the county, right? And so we have an older population, which folks can look at that as a negative thing. I think what's really special about Wabash and what Honeywell and all these other amenities have created is a great place to retire, right? Or move back to. And so you see that with Manchester college grads that went to school at Manchester, they moved away for their career,
Example
they moved
A.
back, right? I just think that we've created this retirement community folks that have disposable incomes, right? Which is important to our local economy. And so our death rate still is about twice our birth rate. What we can do to help either of those statistics, net migration or birth and death rate, is focus on attracting and retaining young people and young families. A lot of times when we talk about population decline or population growth, people just think, oh, more people moving into the county. And I've tried for the last several years and still have to communicate this to folks, right? When we talk about population, if we don't get population retention right, meaning people that grew up here and graduate from our high school, sure, they may go away for school, they may go right into the workforce. If we don't get retention right in terms of creating a place that those kids want to stay and raise their kids or move back to raise their kids, if we don't get that population retention right, we have no chance at the attraction.
Yeah.
If we can't pour and invest in people that are from here, and making it a place that they want to raise their kids or stay or move back to, we have no chance at saying, hey, somebody with no experience in Wabash County, come join us, right? And it takes both in order to arrest population decline. We need people that are just going to move here, like population attraction. But if we don't get the retention piece right and pouring into our young people through the education system, with quality housing opportunities, quality job opportunities, so that they see this as a place that they can raise their kids, a safe community. If we don't get those things right, what are we marketing, right, from an attraction standpoint?
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And the birth rate is kind of a unique situation. It's like, how do you get the public to have more babies?
And that's a cliff, right, that everywhere we just are having less babies today than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the baby boomer, obviously, generation. We're just having less kids.
I think part of it's got to be social media. Now, I mean, I think it's everybody. I think people look at social media and they say, I want to be able to go to Jamaica every 2 years or every year. And then I also want to go to Florida during the winter, and I want to do X and Y, and I want to be able to walk I'm married. I have one, and I have one on the way. And it definitely, kids definitely shake everything up.
Yeah.
Henry currently has a black eye because he got in a fight with his toy tractor. The tractor won, but this time, just wait. I'm sure it may be missing a wheel when I come home.
Yeah.
However, it is a very gratifying process, and I tell all my friends and family, have the babies.
Yeah.
Have them. They are such a blessing. They are a lot of work, and you start your morning out changing a dirty diaper. However, you also start your morning out with a big hug.
Yeah.
Like the most gratifying thing in my morning is my son wrapping his arms around my neck and giving me a big hug.
The most popular guy you're going to be all day.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Especially with your day job as a police officer and maybe even as a realtor sometimes. There's no bigger fan probably than him.
He'll be my biggest fan for the next 4 years.
And then it'll change. And that's honestly not to get too far into the weeds of faith and family, right? But I think that a lot of societal issues that we face today are the broken down family structure, right? And folks that may not be having children, or just what that looks like today has caused a lot of these societal issues that we face.
Yeah, and
you see a lot of that probably up close.
Oh yeah, and what I see the most of is it seems like this stuff stems from broken families, and the obstacle is and this is the difficult part. Who am I to say how you should handle your family? Who am I? And it's like, you're right. It's not my place. And I can't speak to other families, but I can speak to what's worked for me in my life. And these are my views, Keanu Rish's views. There was a point in my life in high school where, I was kind of in a hard spot, and everything seemed to change when I just made a decision that I was going to read the Bible and follow its principles. And in my life, these are my views. It has changed my whole life for the better. My wife's way out of my league, and somehow I got blessed with her. And it just seems like time and time again, the principles of the Bible serve true in my life, and they bring good stuff with it. And so it's not my place to tell you how you should run your family or how you should handle bad events in your family. However, for me personally,
what you stand for.
Those principles have served true in my life. All right, so we've talked about the declining birth rate. We've talked about immigration to the county. What about jobs, and household incomes, is that a fork or a avenue you guys have went down, and do you have any plans on how to address it?
Yeah, and putting a bow on the population conversation, right? I'd mentioned we're pushing to 2030 for the census numbers in 2030. 2024's kind of annual number was positive population growth, and in 25 we dipped a little, I think, and so we are truly in that likely 10 to 40 or 50 swing over the last 5 years, right, in population. So truly slowing the decline was priority A, and then now we're not looking to, I always talk about not wanting to be Fishers or Carmel, right? We're not looking to just explode in terms of population, but I would say that as we think about our tax base or we start talking about income, the number one thing businesses are looking for when looking to invest in a place is the workforce, right? The proximity to workforce, the skilled, trained workforce in a community, right? And so nowadays is it the chicken or the egg, right? Is the business coming first, or do you have the people and then the business comes, right? And our work, and I would say a lot of Imagine 185 is doubled down on attracting and retaining population that then business will attract to that talented and skilled up workforce. A lot of our programs at the Community Foundation, educational attainment is one of our pillars under our community leadership work, and do that from really birth through adulthood and our work with the Learn More Center, right? And continuing to skill up the adult workforce so that we can attract businesses to our community, increasing the tax base, because that's, if we don't, none of us like paying more in taxes, right? And we get more services hopefully for that. None of us like that. And so there's the way that you do that, there's either more money into the pot or you're taxing your existing base more to pay for the increased costs, right? So as we think about population, that's more money into the pot, right? More people that are paying that we can spread that burden across, and then more business too, right? As we think about attracting businesses, that's more money in that's going to spread that burden across, right? And so I know Tennille Zartman, who we mentioned earlier, who's the CEO of Grow Wabash County, their focus is not just attracting new companies, but working with existing companies like you see Ford Meter Box, like you see MPS Eggs. How do we expand these generational local companies who are already in need of more people, right? Working with them to expand their business here in the county. And hopefully, as we talk about area median income and all of those statistics, the more competitive the labor market gets here, the wages go up, right? And the more high quality employers that we have, whether it's attracting or expanding existing, that will continue to hopefully increase income numbers to keep up with inflation or the rising housing costs, just the rising cost of living. I will say, as we look at our cost of living compared to other places, Indiana in general, but especially compared to rural counties and in Wabash County, we're fortunate to have a low cost of living comparatively to other places. And so as we think about that, or housing costs too, right? I mean, we're compared to other places that people could live, an affordable community to live in, right? But that doesn't mean that we can stop in terms of putting the pedal down and bringing more employers and expanding opportunity.
Bob and I were talking about this, and he's like, a big factory comes in, they have 500 employees, where are the top 50 employees going to live? They're the decision makers. I mean, is Kittner Creek big enough to hold everybody? Like, we need these new housing additions to come in. We need a good rural housing division to come in and provide housing for the upper management, even lower management, because if not, I mean, if there's no housing, then is that upper management willing to travel 30 to 45 minutes to work? Is the real question.
And we don't want them to, right? In Indiana, people are paying their income tax in the county that they live in, right? Obviously, property tax you're paying wherever you own property and where you're living, but income tax is where you live, right? So if somebody works at Ford Meter Box or works at MPS Eggs but drives in and out of Fort Wayne every day, that hurts, right? I mean, that hurts. It helps the business, which we want the business to be able to grow, and it's important that we have in-migration for employment opportunities, all those things. But at the end of the day, we have to have attainable housing opportunities for folks to be able to live in, right? And that's all that is entry level, right out of college or no college, right out of high school, working in the foundry at Ford Meter Box, which is a great opportunity for some folks, right? All the way up to that top 10 senior management of that organization. How do we have inventory that addresses all types?
And those apartment complexes next to the river should help. They should, allow some of that older population or the young professionals to come in and give the real estate market a little bit of breathing room, because we really don't have a lot for nice apartments. We have some, and they are nice, but we need more.
But it's all inventory types. And that's out of Imagine 25, I would say one of the things, if we talk about momentum, where I would stick the flag in the ground, and it's a direct fact of our residential contractors, realtors, you all being willing to communicate that these are the challenges, this is what the housing market needs, or what as we talk about a housing crisis, it's easy to talk about how we need more housing, but how do we tactfully do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's been really cool to see kind of the multifaceted approach that we have now to the housing space, from emergency housing, right? People that are truly homeless, and the work that Housing Action Wabash County, Hawk, does in providing emergency shelter down at the Bliss Point, right? And not just the units, but the most important part is the case management piece, right? And so we've been lucky now to work with Hawk to expand their case management, to partner with Habitat for Humanity, who's going to start manning the housing helpline where true people in crisis can call, right? And it's not just the unit, it's not just a place for them to live, but it's how do we get them out of that unit into the next level, right, of units. And so Advantage Housing, who's actually headquartered in Tipton County, or Kokomo, is actually Howard County, but they are developing on these infill lots across the county, right? And renovating existing units with what we call Big A affordable, right? So true subsidized units that are income qualifying, to where there's new units being built on these infill lots through our Stellar Pathways designation. We have 1.5 million that's getting pumped into infill development with Advantage Housing on these lots.
Are those the lots that the mayor was talking about that the city bought and he's planning on rehabbing?
Some of those will be to Advantage Housing. Some of those will be to Habitat. Some of them will be to Heartland Career Center, right, to work with Heartland. And that's been the Wabash County Development Corporation, which we can talk more about, kind of this housing nonprofit entity, is working with the city to make sure that we take those lots, have an inventory of those lots almost as a land bank, and not a negative connotation of sitting on land, but getting them back on the tax roll, right? Who's ready to construct on these lots? Could be a private person, right? Somebody that wants an infill lot. We've got a lot of infill construction from the private market, North Manchester, but countywide. How do we get a lot to them? How do we get a lot to Advantage Housing? And those infill already have utilities to the lots, right? Which we can talk a little bit more too. So Advantage Housing is really focused on building subsidized, income qualifying, affordable, true affordable units for folks, right? And affordable is a weird term, and so when I say capital A, that's income qualifying units, right?
Income
and that's
qualifying
Advantage
units.
Housing's focus. Then we have Habitat, right? And Habitat for Humanity is working to build more homes and pick up the frequency that they can construct. And they're building, again, income qualifying housing units, but also providing home buyer education and case management to those homeowners and to other community members that need case management help, or how do I get into my own home? Habitat's just not focused on their houses, but that resource for the entire county is really their focus. And they're financing the houses and constructing the houses is kind of the Habitat method.
Really? That's neat.
And those are Big A affordable again, right? So those are what we'll call the lower end of the housing ladder. And it's ladder, right? Because the goal is to keep managing and working with folks, whether it's with real estate folks, banking, lending folks, roll-off mortgages, the home buyer education, so people can keep moving up the housing ladder. And what then we found working with, back in 2024, the realtors and the community foundation prior to my time there, was we have this line of after Big A affordable, and we're continuing to develop and work on folks at this end of the housing ladder. But then where's the gap of when the private sector is interested, right? There's projects that because of our rural community and the cost of construction, it costs the same to build a house in Fort Wayne or Fishers or Carmel as it does to build a house in Wabash. Land prices are going to be different.
Yeah.
But it costs the same to construct roughly, but they can sell it for $100,000 more than what we can sell it for in our rural housing market.
Yeah.
And so there was this gap. And so we created, through the Imagine 25 work, the Wabash County Development Corporation has its own 11-member board of directors, asked 11 business owners across the county, because they all know that their people need housing, right, and that we're battling housing. That 11-member board, the Community Foundation today, provides staffing to that organization. There's no marketing. There's no events. That organization's sole focus is to facilitate housing development with the private sector or other nonprofit entities, or on projects that aren't attractive to the private sector, take those projects on. Right. And so the Development Corporation started the Neighborhood Stabilization Initiative, which takes existing, the Indiana Housing Community Development Authority says there's 1,100 vacant units in the county, 1,100 existing structures that are vacant today. blighted and vacant today. And so the development corporation gets them under contract with the owner. Could be somebody out of town that has no plan on ever renovating it, somebody that got a property at tax sale. We tie that up in a purchase agreement, work with hopefully a local private developer to take it on. And then after 60 days, the development corporation closes on it, renovates it itself, and sells it. So hires a local contractor to do the renovations. After it's renovated, sells that with the goal of an attainable price point.
So how many houses have you done like those?
There's 9 properties that have gone from the development corporation in a purchase agreement to the private sector to take on. The development corporation has 4 under construction right now that it's the developer on. So 1 in North Manchester, 2 in Wabash, 1 in LaFountain. And then another property in Manchester that was the very kind of beta test last year in 2025 that the development corporation bought a property that sat for 20 years for $14,000 right on the river up in North Manchester, renovated it, sold it for under $200,000, and it was gone in 48 hours.
Really?
Right. And we think that $200,000 and under is that sweet spot, which we've heard from you guys, right?
So for sure.
Any decision the development corporation's made has just come from feedback from contractors, realtors, lending institutions. And so we've structured that initiative of this acquisition and renovation of these blighted single family homes based on direct feedback from you guys of new construction costs and the market that exists for a house that's under 200,000 versus 200 to 250 versus when you get above 250, that number gets a lot smaller, right? In terms of the market that's out there that's looking for a unit compared to the ones that are under 200,000, right?
Yeah.
And so we know we need to fix up these blighted homes that are across the county.
Oh yeah.
And so
I absolutely
that's
agree.
the focus kind of for that initiative and being able to sell that inventory at an attainable price point.
So I've often said many times, and I haven't really taken the initiative on it, was there needs to be a program for new builds, remodels, in a way that makes it beneficial to push more of them out, whether it's a grant, whether it's a tax exemption. We need to do something to stimulate the more move-in ready homes.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough homes with a new roof, new windows, new heat
Feels
and
like
AC.
new, right? When you
Yes.
walk in.
Yeah.
And that's that's when we work with contractors through that. It's truly working with them to say, this needs to feel like a new constructed house when they get in. And so the Community Foundation we have a $200,000 line of credit from the Community Foundation's impact investing to the Development Corporation that they use for acquisition rehab. And then Crossroads Bank, our community lending institution, came alongside and said, we'll be flexible from a approval standpoint and a paperwork standpoint. So we have an additional $600,000 line of credit with Crossroads, right? So there's $800,000 that we're using for this acquisition renovation work on properties that aren't attractive to the private sector to take on, so that we can still, with the lower interest rate, the development corporation's only goal is to make 5%, right, on a property. Anything other than that is we're using to hopefully make it an attainable price point for homeowners.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be attractive always, right, to a for-profit developer. Most for-profit developers will want more than that. And so when there's a property that a private developer says, man, I'm not going to be able to get the money out of that it's going to take to renovate it in this market, that's when the development corporation steps in to still renovate it and be able to sell it at an attainable price.
To stimulate more growth and
Clean
more
up
homes.
neighborhoods,
And
right?
Oh,
we
yeah.
named it neighborhood stabilization because we want the assessed values in that street, right? On East Hill Street in Wabash, in North Manchester, when there's investments going on in the riverfront and different places. We want all of those things to work together to raise property values, right, across the county, and stimulate the housing market in that way. And not that new construction isn't important, right? Like we still need to move in the development corporation as the developer on the new townhomes across from Manchester University. We worked with Manchester for the Lilly Endowment's College and Community Collaboration Grant, where we received $12.1 million for 4 main projects: the new Eel River Commons, which is the riverfront park in downtown North Manchester; the Manchester Mile, that's a trail that connects that riverfront park a mile up to campus, so up through the heart of Manchester and over to campus. The College Row housing development, which that trail connects to across from campus, is 20 new townhomes. We've got the first 6 that have been constructed. 2 have pre-sold to staff and faculty. They'll hit the open market in the next couple weeks. But that was 2 blocks of lots that have sat off the tax roll, because Manchester University's owned them as a nonprofit, off the tax roll for decades. That now the Development Corporation has worked with this grant funding to construct these new townhomes for home ownership opportunities and created an inventory type that we don't have a lot of in the county yet. And so far it's gone really well, right? So it's not just renovation of existing units. It's not just infill lot construction, but it's, again, we need more units across the housing ladder in the county, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree that would solve a lot of problems for buyers. Sellers are in a pretty good position. I've seen it for the last 4 years. Sellers are in a good position. I consistently see them do better than what they purchased the home for, which is the norm. However, the buyers, they struggle to find good homes for a reasonable price.
Yeah.
And there's just a shortage of them.
Yeah.
What it is, there's just a shortage of them. So I got some generic questions here. Some of them we've already covered. Imagine 185 has 85 recommendations. What are some of the top recommendations that you think are impactful and are a good target for that you guys are actively pursuing? Obviously, I'm sure you guys are pursuing all 85, but there's got to be some of the 85 that are top 5, top 10. That is your guys' core agenda. We've got to get X, Y, and Z done before we can progress to the other 82 items.
Yeah, and I think that since the plan was adopted in 2022 till now, we've seen a lot of momentum across those 85 initiatives, some of which are no longer priorities, right, for the county. Like we wanted a state park through that. And I think it's important to note, Imagine 185, all of those projects came out of stakeholder engagement, right? So the 2 years in the planning process was community open houses, asking through surveys what the county wanted to see, right? Was where those project ideas came from. Some of those just have not been prioritized anymore, right? To your point about the more important ones versus not important ones. I would say that just a couple of the plan's broken down into 4 sections. Great places, which is investment in amenities, so trails, right? We can talk the Wabash River Trail that Amy Ford and the Wabash River Trail nonprofit worked really hard to connect LeGros to Wabash. There's an extension off of that trail that was included in Imagine 185 to connect to the city park through downtown Wabash from where that trail currently ends. That project we were able to get included in our Stellar Pathways designation, but now private funders have stepped up to bring that project to fruition without the grant funding.
That's
right?
awesome.
So the mayor and the city working with them to bring that project to fruition. So great places, again, amenity driven. So trails, connectivity, the Riverfront Park in North Manchester. Eel River Commons was in the 2015 comp plan for the town of North Manchester as the top priority on this property in downtown on the riverfront. 2018, 2019, Imagine 185 started, and it was the top North Manchester initiative based on stakeholder feedback was investment in the riverfront in North Manchester. Then we see the Lilly College Community Collaboration Grant process in 2023. We received that grant and then just got another $1 million from the Ready 2.0 initiative through the state of Indiana. That project can now come to fruition, right? So 2015 to 2026, construction will start in 27, 12 years by the time that park is open from when it was a concept that was prioritized by the community. And if you remember back earlier in the episode, we talked about a concept, due diligence, moving the project along. So over these last years, right, we've done architecture design work, we've created the fancy renderings and graphics, raised money from the community, garnered outside funding support. Now we're at implementing the project, right? We've secured all the funding for that project. It's a $10 million investment on a 3-acre parcel in downtown North Manchester on the riverfront. It's a game changer, right? So that's in the great places section. Trails, connectivity, quality of life, quality of place. The second is prosperity is what it's called, but it's really all workforce education based, right? So continued work in early childhood education. The Community Foundation, we support roughly between $400,000 and $500,000 every year in grant making work to expand early childhood opportunities and early childhood accessibility in the county. We worked with 5 community-based early childhood providers to raise teacher wages so that we cut back on turnover from early childhood educators across the system to now be able to hopefully use our money as operating grants to those facilities to help lower the cost for parents, right? And not the parents that are on state vouchers, who are the lower income parents or families that may utilize the state voucher system. We found out there was an in-between in the middle, kind of like housing, right? Where you have folks that there is a lot of support for from the government potentially to help offset the costs. And then there's market rate, folks that can afford the cost of childcare. But there's a huge gap in the middle that are spending way too much money to access childcare, right? Like the majority of people fall in that middle category. So we hope to use our grant money on the early childhood space. So that was a priority there. But then I'd mentioned all the way up to adult education and workforce, right? One of the Imagine 25 initiatives was a new adult workforce training center that the Learn More Center opened up in the old Miller Furniture building off Cass Street in Wabash, right? And so we continue to provide at the Community Foundation support and operating grant funding and scholarships to adults across the county who are going back to get their GED, going back to get a CDL or their certificate, or go on to college, right? That's going back to school and getting their Ivy Tech courses done to then stack into a degree from Manchester or another higher education institution.
Gotcha.
And then in the middle, the Community Foundation, we have a long-term kind of our flagship program, which is Imagine Early. Used to be branded Early Award Scholarship Program, was Wabash County Promise before that. We're not going to change the name anymore. It's Imagine Early.
Okay.
But we're in our 10th school year, and that's a program where now from birth through the 12th grade, students earn scholarships, right? From attending school, just attendance, from completing their math and reading assignments, from having an internship in high school. All of those things, students earn money that we invest in a fund here at the Community Foundation with the rest of our assets that grows to when they get to the 12th grade, they can apply for more traditional scholarships, but they have this fund that's been invested up to $3,000 now that they can use for the trades, for tools, for college. Is that $3,000 a full ride for a student to go somewhere? Probably not, right? But we've been able to work with them and instill the value of doesn't have to be college, but education after high school, a certificate, something, right, that prepares you and stacks on top of your high school diploma. And you can use that $3,000 for any of that educational expense after.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so really that's the prosperity section, right? Workforce, education based, and have continued to move initiatives forward there. And then like we talked a lot about the housing space, right? Housing community is another pillar of Imagine 185. And so working again with Advantage Housing, Habitat, and Hawk on the lower end of the housing spectrum, providing continued grant funding and support, and then the Stellar funding they include in the Stellar package for them to continue to create inventory, big A affordable inventory and case management, the wraparound for individuals. So we're standing more of that up this year. The Wabash County Development Corporation, which is that middle of the road before housing projects are attractive to the private sector. And then you see the Fulton Street apartments on the riverfront that are coming to fruition, right? That's a Ready 2.0 project as well. You see Chester Heights, the second phase of Chester Heights coming in the next 2 years. Adam Penrod from the town has decided to work with the Development Corporation on that. So the Development Corporation will engage local contractors to be able to buy lots and build homes on the second phase there. And then downtown redevelopment too, right? Falls in that housing community development stack of Imagine 185, where we'll have a focus here. The Community Foundation's providing some early impact investing funding to take some of these downtown buildings that have sat vacant in some cases for decades and work with other community partners to activate those and the private sector to activate those. And then the last section is what's called foundations, which is just infrastructure, right? That was another part of Imagine 185, broadband, getting connectivity
That's a huge
and broadband
deal.
access.
Like I get asked that a lot. Is there fiber optic out to the home?
Yeah,
and that's residential homes.
It's more important than it is any other utility, right? I'm guessing that nobody asks you, is this Duke or is this RMC?
No, nobody asks that.
Who's providing my water here, right? It's broadband. Is there high-speed internet, right? And so that was, out of all the stakeholder engagement, 2,000 public comments in Imagine 185's planning process, the top three were housing, education, and broadband. Right, those were the top three things that our community said, if we're going to grow and retain residents, attract residents, those are the top three priorities. And so I would say that our implementation time, effort, and again, it's not just when I was leading the Imagine 185 work or now with Connor Heineman, who's the project manager for Imagine 185. It's not just the government entities, not just the nonprofits, not just the private sector, but that collective work of leading that implementation. I mean, last week we broke ground on the Manchester Mile, right, which is a collaboration with Manchester University, the trail that connects the college to downtown. We broke ground for Daniel's Place, right, which is a new respite care facility in North Manchester. That was $1 million of Stellar funding as a part of the Imagine 185 initiative. I mean, it's all of these people and these organizations that work together. That had government grant funding, that had private fundraising from individuals, that had Lilly money. I mean, all of these projects, it takes more than just one source or one person to pull it off. And that's what's special about the Imagine 185 work is everybody working at the same table to bring these projects to fruition.
Yeah. All right. So we're wrapping up the podcast. you've been here for about 10 years, 9?
16 as a freshman at Manchester.
16 as a freshman.
2016 was
Okay.
when I was a freshman at Manchester. So yeah, I'm in the county for 10 years now.
Okay, I was doing the math. I'm like, man, he was in college for a long time.
4 years.
Okay.
Undergrad.
What are some of your favorite moments here in Wabash County? Like the ones you think back on, you're like, man, I'm so glad I moved here. They could be funny, rewarding, a combination of both, and then maybe a couple closing points that you want to communicate to our viewers, and we'll call it a wrap.
Yeah, great question. A couple of just quick favorite moments of our, and I'm not married yet, don't have kids in schools yet. So some of my favorite moments have been with my work so far, right? That I've gotten to experience. The Rowan Park was Rowan's top priority in the Imagine 185 plan. And if anybody knows Bob Ferguson,
Oh, yeah.
treasurer there, he's been talking about the park for almost 10 years, 8 to 10 years, right? And when I sat down early, week 1, as the Imagine 185 director, I walked into Bob's office. Bob and I sat down, and he pulls out this piece of graph paper, and Bob would love to tell a story, but he had taken a wheel and measured the park property where he wanted the park to be, and each square was however many yards, right? And he drew out on this true piece of graph paper, like if you remember school, where everything was going to be, and he was like, this is the plan for the park. And I said, well, Bob, we got to bring this to life, right? We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So we worked with MKM, who does a ton of our architecture and design work. They're based in Fort Wayne. They do a ton in the county. And next thing you know, they created a park master plan and renderings, right? Then people and then people start to open their eyes and say, holy cow, is this park happening, right? Or they're complaining about things in the rendering, and it's like, this is just an example, right? It's not going to be built just like this. This past Saturday was at a fundraiser for the park equipment, and the Ryan Park was in stellar fundraising. They've gotten a couple large gifts from donors. The Community Foundation's been able to hold the park fund and work with donors to bring the park to fruition. It's going to be almost $1.5 million park in a town of 500 people.
Really?
And does that sound like a lot? But construction, you know how expensive that goes.
Yeah.
But that park is going to be there for the next 50 years. And to see Bob Ferguson's joy this past Saturday celebrating the park coming to fruition, we had the opportunity to award him our Philanthropist of the Year award for the work that he's done. What a lot of people don't see, they've seen the time that Bob's put into that project. They've seen how much passion he has in the project. But as you think about philanthropy, time, talent, treasure, I remember the very first night that the town council approved that park design that we'd created, and Bob's was the very first $500 check to support that project, the very first one into the fund, right? And so people, it's important to Bob, right? And so that's one of my favorite moments is getting to see Bob's reactions. The other, Cheryl Working, who's the founder of Daniel's Place, got to break ground this last week for that project. And her son's Daniel, right, who has disabilities. And to see that project that at once was just a dream of Cheryl and her daughter Erin, who's since passed away, to now see that project come to fruition and everything that went into it. I mean, I remember sitting down at our Stellar presentation, and Cheryl's presenting to the Stellar Review Committee. And after Cheryl finished, there was no way they were going to tell us no, right? That they weren't going to fund Wabash County as one of 2 counties as a Stellar community. And so to see her get to break ground, the only moment that'll be better is when that facility's done in the next 8 months, to stand in there with Cheryl, because it's so personal to her. And what started as a passion of hers is now just a part of this community, right? So that was another exciting one. And then the last one, just I'll briefly close. I was sitting down at the 950 Speakeasy in LeGros.
Yep.
And everybody knows what that trail has done for LeGros, right? They've seen the momentum, the housing renovations. I mean, I always say I grew up in a city, metro area of 2 million people, and now live in a town of less than 400 because of how contagious LeGros has become.
Yeah.
But I was sitting at the Speakeasy with former Senator Andy Zay, and he's like, man, we got to put LeGros on the map. Like, how are we going to put LeGros on the map? And he had this idea that he truly drew on a cocktail napkin of like Hollywood letters for LeGros. Right, and so we were able to get steel fabricated letters from R&D Metal Fab, a local metal fabrication shop. Got a state grant, raised some local money to pull it all together, and now there's letters that are 12 feet up in the air that spell out LeGros with lights on them as you drive down 24, right? And it was just, every town has those little green signs, but now when people are going on 24, they see like that LeGros passion and LeGros.
Oh, yeah, because it looks good. I mean, I remember it was a big talk when it first came up.
And it's just like those little things that I think total that project was under $10,000, right?
Yeah.
With all the sources in it. And so whether it's big, exciting riverfront parks, $10 million riverfront parks, or housing projects, but it's those little ones. Each of those has a story, right, that goes into the project details of what brings it to fruition. That's what I love most about this community, is at a young age it allowed me to get in, and people that are willing to jump in the trenches, meet folks, pour in the time and energy, have the opportunity to work on things that I imposter syndrome, right? Have no business getting to work on. But the people, my team at the Community Foundation, our community, the leaders of our organizations just have allowed me the opportunity to get to work on a lot of exciting things. And you can, right, in a rural community.
Oh, yeah,
if you
for
want to
sure.
get involved, you can. You can be a full-time police officer and real estate agent and be on a real estate podcast, right?
Yeah.
That's not common in most places.
Yeah, we're super blessed. And I don't know Cheryl, but I know Bob. And the energy that guy has, he is on fire.
Yeah. Best
And,
radio voice out there.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a blast. And there's a lot of exciting and good things happening in Wabash. And, yeah, stay tuned. And thank you for listening. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. It's a free, easy way you guys can contribute to the podcast and help us get awesome guests like Alex Downard on here. So
Thanks so much for the invite. Appreciate all you do.
thanks, man.
Yep.